In the shadow of the gods, in the year 356 before the Common Era, a child was born who would make the heavens themselves tremble. His name was Alexander, son of a mortal king, lover of a serpent queen, and chosen vessel of Zeus. This is the true story of the man who conquered the world before he was old enough to grow a beard, and who burned it all down chasing a dream no mortal was meant to hold. He came into the world on the same night the great temple of Artemis at Ephesus burned to the ground. As flames consumed the marble columns of the goddess, priests whispered that Artemis herself was absent attending the birth of the child destined to shake empires. In Pella, the capital of Macedon, Queen Olympias dreamed of thunderbolts. She swore that a bolt of lightning had entered her womb and set her body aflame. When she told her husband, King Philip II, he smiled a proud, uneasy smile and sealed her womb with the image of a lion. From the moment the boy first opened his eyes, they told him he was no ordinary child. At 7 years old, Alexander's childhood ended. His Spartan tutor, Leonidas, believed softness was sin. He starved the Prince of Comfort, stripped him of privilege, and forced him to run 10 miles barefoot through stony hills until his lungs burned and his legs gave way. The lesson was brutal but clear. A king who would command men must first master pain. Even at that age, the boy never cried. When the servants begged Leonidas to show mercy, the young prince only said, "The gods eat ambrosia, but I will eat discipline." At 13, a new teacher arrived, one whose name would echo through eternity, Aristotle of Stagaea. Each morning in the gardens of Mieza, the philosopher walked beside the prince under whispering olive trees. He fed Alexander's mind with the words of Homer, the logic of Plato, and the dream of a single human family united by reason and courage. Aristotle taught him that knowledge was the truest form of power. And the boy listened not as a student, but as someone already convinced that destiny had chosen him. When he was 12, long before the lessons of Mieza, the young Alexander had already revealed the man he would become. One morning, a black Thessalian stallion was brought before King Philip. The horse was magnificent, wild, muscular, eyes like dark fire. But no man could ride him. He kicked, he bit, he reared against every hand that touched the reins. The court laughed, and Philip ordered the animal led away. Then Alexander stepped forward. He studied the horse quietly, noticing how it flinched each time its own shadow crossed its eyes. "He fears himself," the boy said. Turning the stallion toward the sun so the shadow fell behind, he whispered softly, "Bucephalus." The horse stilled. The prince mounted, and together they flew across the field like thunder breaking free. When they returned, Philip wept. He clasped his son's shoulders and said, "My son, seek another kingdom, for Macedon is too small for you." Years passed. The boy became a youth of hard sinew and burning eyes. At 16, while Philip campaigned abroad, Alexander commanded the left wing of the Macedonian army at Chaeronea. Facing him stood the pride of Greece, the sacred band of Thebes, men who had never known defeat. At the signal, Alexander charged. Bronze met bronze. Dust and blood filled the air. When it cleared, the sacred band lay shattered like cheap pottery, their once invincible line broken by a boy not yet grown to manhood. The victory crowned Philip's dream of Greek unity, but the legend born that day belonged to Alexander. 2 years later, at a wedding feast in Aegae, the dream of Macedon was drowned in blood. As torches burned and music filled the hall, a dagger flashed. King Philip fell, his lifeblood spilling across the marble floor. Before the corpse was cold, the 20-year-old Alexander stood before the army. The men who had fought beside his father, veterans of a dozen wars, struck their spears upon their shields and acclaimed him king of Macedon. Rivals rose, and rivals died. His cousin Attalus was beheaded. The infant son of Philip's new wife, Cleopatra Eurydice, was dashed against a wall. Olympias watched, serpent-eyed and silent, as vengeance made way for her son's throne. Greece, restless under Macedonian rule, dared to rebel. The city of Thebes led the charge, believing Alexander too young, too untested to fight. They were wrong. From Pella he marched south with such fury that the dust of his army never had time to settle. 13 days. 400 kilometers. Thebes awoke to see Macedonian siege towers kissing its walls. When the city fell, Alexander made an example that would echo across centuries. 6,000 Thebans lay dead, 30,000 more were sold into slavery. Only one house was spared, the home of the poet Pindar, whose verses had once praised heroes. The rest of Greece understood. The boy king was not to be tested. Athens sent envoys bearing olive branches and trembling pleas for mercy. Alexander received them with a smile, cold, polite, divine. He accepted their surrender and, for the first time, turned his eyes eastward. The age of kings was ending. The age of Alexander was about to begin. Spring, 334 BCE. 45,000 men. 5,000 horses. One dream. They crossed the narrow strait of the Hellespont, the border between Europe and Asia, the gateway to the Persian Empire. As his ship touched the Asian shore, Alexander leapt onto the sand, threw his spear into the earth, and proclaimed, "I take this land with a spear." At Troy, he laid a wreath upon the tomb of Achilles and took from the temple what was said to be the hero's own shield. To his friends he said quietly, "Happy Achilles, to have found a faithful friend in life and a great poet to praise him after death." The Persian satraps laughed at the audacity of the young Macedonian who claimed descent from Zeus. But when the Granicus River ran red with Persian blood, their laughter turned to fear. 100 Macedonians dead. 7,000 Persians cut down. The first battle of his conquest ended with Asia trembling. That summer, the legend deepened. In Gordium, an ancient knot of rope bound a weathered ox cart. Prophecy said that whoever could untie the knot would rule all Asia. Kings before him had tugged and struggled in vain. Alexander studied it for a moment, then drew his sword and cut it clean in half. The oracle's voice carried through every camp, "The prophecy is fulfilled." From that day, his men marched not for Macedon, but for destiny. They followed a boy who believed he was born of Zeus and bound to unite the world not by chains, but by vision. He would not rest until East and West knelt beneath one crown. The boy who had tamed a monster horse had now drawn his first blood across the corpse of an empire. But Persia was only the beginning. The God King has taken his first breath of glory. In the next episode, Alexander meets Darius face to face, and makes a great king run for his life.